Alrighty, hello and welcome to the 2025 Season 4 Week 4 track guide by Team Conti Sim Performance. We are at Las Vegas Motor Speedway this week with the NASCAR NextGen car. I am Michael Conti back in the car this week and going to go ahead and take you for a 30-lap run around Las Vegas, detail the handling evolution over the run, some of the tire wear characteristics, and just really anything that you'll need to know to be successful in this upcoming week. Similar to Kansas, big time tire management needed early on. We've got some heavy tire wear, and we don't have a whole lot of fall off early, but the tire wear definitely influences it the second half of the run. So it's going to be critical to manage the first part of the run well, right? Back off your lap time, make sure to limit the tires slip and scrub. And if you do all of that efficiently, effectively, you should have something to race with the last 30 of a run. So without further ado, we'll kick this track guide off here. Right off the bat, let's talk about the gear choice. It's going to be 5th gear all the way around with our TCSP setup this week. I think, again, similar to Kansas, you'll have some people with some different gears, some of whom might be shifting, some of whom might try to keep it in 4th and just smack the limiter on fresh tires. I think this is one of those things where there's a couple different ways to skin a cat. We've had success in the intermediates in the past, especially those that are high wear, by keeping RPM just a little bit lower. Manages the rear tires a smidge better because you're just less likely to spin them. But as we go into turn 1 here, a lot of grip in these first couple laps. Really makes you want to use the grip, right? Really sail it in there. Keep a lot of throttle in it. And while the car can take it, you don't want to do that. Very right rear limited this week, as I think most will be, because if you're tight, you're slow. And being tight by yourself means that when you're in a bunch of traffic, you're going to be plowing your face off, which is going to be even slower. So I think everybody's going to be pretty edgy this week. Again, similar to Kansas. So manage the tires, specifically the right rear. Now, how do we do that? A couple different ways. Number 1, full lift at both ends of the track, even though you could probably just partial lift in one and make the corner. Full lift to take a little bit of speed and load out of the right sides momentarily. And then when you start getting back in the gas, don't light switch it. As you can see here, if you look at the bottom left, my initial throttle reapplication's like 50-60%. I work it up to 80, 85, 90, and I kind of hold it there for a little bit. And then I commit to 100% throttle way farther around the corner, just to make sure that I'm not chewing away at that right rear from center off as I really apply that throttle. You're saving the right rear mostly on exit by keeping some throttle out of it. You're saving both right side tires by fully lifting at both ends of the track. So what does that mean for lap time? Well, definitely going to have to give up some lap time early to save tire here. There's no way around that. And I think there's going to be people on different strategies this week. Some of whom are going to run up to the front, really use those tires and hope for cautions. And then you're going to have some people who really save. They're going to save. They're going to save in the beginning. They're going to lose spots inevitably. But as long as they get 15 or 20 laps, they're going to come blasting back through the field. I would rather be somebody who is set up for the long run. That way I can be on the offense later versus going balls to the wall, setting purple laps 15 consecutively, and then having a right rear tire that's all but dead. Fuel runs about 60 laps, so figure if you kill your right rear after 15, you have 45 you got to go with a really bad handling race car. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the driver is going to make the most difference. And since returning from my very much needed summer vacation and reacclimating to the sim and learning about this new build, I really had to come to terms with the fact that intermediates are not what they were last build. When it comes to tires and tire management and how hard you can push, last build you could pretty much just drive to a fairly hard pace, and as long as you never really stepped over the limit or started to compound heat in one particular tire, if you kept those tires nice and equal, right front to right rear, you could keep a lot of pace in the car throughout the run without mega saving. Now, you have to save. I don't know if it's because we've gone to Kansas and Vegas back to back and they're both historically high wear, high load tracks, and it's just making me feel like something's changed, but I think something definitely changed in the last build to make these intermediates more sensitive to how you're driving, and to how hard you're driving and how that affects the tires. So that's a lot about the tires. The moral of the story, the too long didn't read version, or didn't listen in this case, is make sure you save tire early on. Now you'll see I'm concentrating most of my early laps to the bottom. That's for a couple different reasons. Number one, 99% of the time at an oval and iRacing, your best line for tires is going to be right around the bottom. You're just using less throttle, you're carrying less center speed, you're putting less load into the tires. So I'm going to keep it on the bottom for that reason. Reason number two is the bottom is the smoothest part of this track. There are big bumps all the way through 1 and 2, bottom to top, but if you can get that left front on or as close as possible to the white line, it's a little bit easier down there on those bumps. And with how rigid these cars are, with how sensitive the underbodies are, which has been a total pain in the butt to set up for this week, anything you can do to get to smoother asphalt is just going to make it much more comfortable. It's also going to keep some load out of those tires too. The more the car bounces up and down, you think, okay, well, what is the one thing that's between the car and the track? That would be the tires. So anything you can do to keep some energy out of those, some vertical load out of those, is going to be good. Going to save some temperature. You'll notice right there, all the way center through like the 7/8 mark. I didn't get to 100% throttle. I got to like 90 and kept it there. Very, very, very small slip window in these next-gen cars since the Season 3 update. Used to be able to set it on the right rear and drive off of the right rear like we could the last generation car. And when iRacing did that big aero update, they took all that away. So you are on a razor's edge, especially when we have to set up the cars as loose as we are setting them up now to be manageable in traffic. Just a lot of different things have changed over the last build or two, and they're all contributing to each other. Way more dirty air now, which means you have to set the car up looser. Because you're setting the car up looser, you are stressing out the rear tires more. When you stress out the rear tires more, you quickly realize you have less to lean on because the side force has been significantly reduced. And then again, on top of all of that, it feels like the tires on the intermediates are more sensitive than they were last build. So we're just constantly trying to evolve and keep up with what iRacing is giving us, which is fun and also a little bit of a pain at the same time. But hey, it keeps it from getting kind of static and monotonous, so I like that part of it. Alright, so lap 15 starting here, still in the 30.3, so about a second worth of fall off so far. And we'll get to a point in this run where it plateaus, and I'll lose a little bit of lap time, but not nearly as much. Around lap 20, I'll start to move the line around a little bit and experiment, see where maybe you can make some ground up in your races as the track rubbers in and you have traffic and other things to contend with. But again, in thinking about where the bumps are and how sensitive the underbody is, moving around anywhere in 1 and 2 is just going to put you deeper into the bumps, so we're going to have to be careful with that. 3 and 4 is way smoother, so there should be more flexibility there, but historically the middle has kind of gotten a bit greasy late exit, which has limited your ability to really carry that extra momentum. So putting all that together, we'll see what we have here in a couple laps. And slow initial lift into a quick full lift at the bottom of the pedal, slowly back into it. Just walk the car up the track a little bit more than you would probably in the past, just to keep the rear straighter, not skew it out, or yaw it out rather. right out to the wall off 4. I'm not using the apron, although it probably saved me a hundredth or two. Unlike Kansas, this apron is a bit harder to utilize without slipping tires, so I would avoid it if you can. Much quicker lift into 3 just because we've got to bleed more speed to make the corner. If you look at the cadence with which I release the throttle, you'll notice it's a much more linear quick lift in 3, whereas it's a slower, more progressive lift down here in 1. So 2 different approaches. They probably look very similar, but when you start to dive in, quite a bit different in the execution. So 19 complete. We'll complete 20 here in the next lap, and then I'll start to move around and see what we can find that might be usable in the race. Good rear grip. I think I've managed pretty well. I've still got to be careful though, even this late in the run. If I start to overdrive, I can then heat up that right rear and still make it bad, but we've gotten past the most critical part of the run and the car feels pretty good. Get all the way down to that white line. Don't track out too fast. That wall comes up quickly, but still track out enough so you're not pinching at an exit. So that's 20 complete at 30.56. Now I'll start to move around. So this is going to be the old conventional line, where you sort of straddle that first seam. And as you can see there, no good. That line hasn't been great in a couple of years. It's been somewhat usable though. I just feel like with the new underbody stuff, it's not really going to be an option. We are more sensitive, we're more rigid, very stiff obviously in the back, and you just don't have enough compliance in the suspension to make it work. Give it a shot in your races, but I will not be running the middle at any point, I don't think, unless the bottom gets super bad. Let's try the middle in 3 and 4. We'll stay between these driving experience gates here. Feels like I'm kind of out in no man's land. Not bad handling wise. I don't think the speed was that great though. We were doing mid 5s at 20 and now messing around with the line. I'm in the 6s. I'm going to try this again here. I'm a glutton for punishment. I was a little better. I was a little higher. But still, because I had to really back up my entry speed, you know, I'm halfway down the back in the red. We'll go back to the bottom here. Should be able to pull entry to center versus the last lap. Question is, can I maintain on exit? Survey says yes. So back to a low 6 with middle bottom. Now let's try the bottom again in 1 and 2. Definitely gain time on entry. Plenty of grip to drive up off the bottom. I'll lose a little bit down the back, but should still be in the green. Half a tenth or so. Into 3, quick full lift. Back on the throttle, watch the rear slip. Watch the rear slip. And back into the mid 5s by running that conventional bottom. Now we'll go to the top. I think this might be decent. It's either going to be decent or I'm going to crash. Almost crashed. You can really carry a lot of throttle up there, but again, you're slamming into those bumps and it's no good. You keep doing that, you're going to spike tire temperature and you're going to have no right rear in no time. Now this top in 3 and 4, which I'm going to try again next lap, in testing, this has been really good late in the run. If you can set up the exit, if you could shape the corner in such a way that you can really commit to throttle, that top feels very, very good. You can just keep a lot more speed up there versus trying to run the bottom. Back to the bottom here in 1 and 2, 3/10 in the green. This would put us back in a mid 5. I'll go back to the top, full lift, and then I just want to get back in it. Don't slip the rear. Right, late exit, it wants to slip the rear. Got it back though, and that's going to be a 54 on 26, which is really strong. So back to the bottom. We'll go bottom this lap. Little loose. Feel that top is starting to aggravate the right rear. So go back to the bottom here, settle the right rear, see what kind of lap time's available. gain entry to center. If I can make the exit, let's see what I can do. But you can see the lap time loss right there for not having that momentum from the top. So even on a clean track, halfway through a fuel run, that top in 3 and 4 seems to be the better place to be for outright lap time. And not for that right rear, it will abuse it. But if you manage it, it might be good, especially as the bottom gets worn out. So back to the top here. A little tight that time. Have to get used to that again. Try to shave a little bit of lap time here. There we go. Let's see what we can do. 29 and 30. Committing bottom and top. Good. 1 and 2. Almost 3/4 of a tenth in the green. Do a little better job setting up my entry here. Make sure I don't get tight. There we go. I just watch late exit. Make sure I don't get loose. Good. Not going to cut here. That'll be a 60. That's good. And one more lap. Bottom top. Really good drive off here. Car's handling well. We'll go back to the top. Big throttle. I can feel I'm slipping the right rear. Got to be careful. Didn't quite shape that one as best as I could, but still, a 64 to end is strong. We'll do a green flag pit in, pit out, and then exit the car. Do a deep dive at both ends, and then call this one good to go. I'm going to put a little bit of front brake bias in it here. I'm going to commit to the bottom, try to get most of my braking done on the track. Give it a little bit of a berth, up the track, and back down, 50 miles an hour. As always, up straight, back down straight, exit the track straight. So we'll pretend like I'm going to keep pit road speed here. Can't be bothered to. I don't think anybody wants to watch me drive 50. So here we go. We're going to exit in second gear. Watch for wheel spin down here. Short shift to third. I'm going to be right rear limited all the way through this apron. Get the merge point off too, and then back on the track. All right, very good. That felt like a good run. Happy with that one. So go ahead here and exit the car. Take a quick look at a few laps. Look and see what I did on the top. Pit in, pit out, and we'll be good to go. So let's look at the hot lap, which is a race pace hot lap. So mind you, this isn't all out best pace here, but this is still representative. And you'll notice that slow lift at the top of the pedal. Right about here, already starting to pull off the wall well before this track logo right here. And you look at that slow lift, slow, slow, and then quick. So it's very slow to the 50% mark, and then it's quick from 50 to 0. Again, to recap why I do that, it's two reasons. Number one, the slow lift keeps the rear locked in and settled. If I abruptly dump the throttle out of it, that rear is going to swing around, which being rear limited already, we don't need any more rotation. We do need more rotation in 3 and 4, as well as we need to bleed more speed, which is why the execution of the lift is completely opposite, which we'll look at in just a bit. Bringing this back though, the second reason for that slow lift at the top of the pedal, quick lift at the bottom, is again to keep forward momentum, right? I don't want to bleed a ton of speed, so I've got that slow lift at the top just to start to plateau the speed, start to ease off and stop the increase in speed. And as I get deeper into and through the entry zone, then I do that quick lift because, okay, now I'm getting farther into the corner. I'm getting closer to my minimum roll speed moment. I need to get the speed bled out of the car. I need to do it quicker than I was 100 feet before. And I also need that extra rotation now as the car compresses, lands, and gets into the corner. So again, slow lift at the top of the pedal, quick lift at the bottom. That's going to be your MO in 1 and 2. whereas 3 and 4 is going to be just a fairly quick lift from top to bottom, much more straightforward, as opposed to 1 and 2. So again, that's how we do the lifting in 1 and 2. And you got to get down to the bottom early. A lot of people, they enter really high and they make a big arc and they cut across the track, okay? And they drive through the bumps. They drive through the bumps with a bunch of angle. So when you've got wheel in the car and you're turning down and you're lifting, right? That left front's going to kind of grab and pull the thing to the left, which is going to skew or yaw the right rear out, and it's going to slip the right rear. So you don't want to have a bunch of angle on entry. If we rewind this a little bit here, you'll notice I'm not doing a big arc. Like if I wanted to do a big old school arc like we would have done years ago when we had when we were going 205 and had to slow down way more and had less grip and everything was better, or so most feel. We had the big arc to make the corner. We don't have to do that anymore because we've got the grip, we've got the tire, we've just got the aero to slow us down naturally. These things are draggy. So I don't need to slow down a lot. I've got plenty of grip just to turn in early, get to that white line and hook it. And also in doing that more shallow entry, I'm hitting the bump straighter when I compress into the corner, which puts me at less risk of upsetting the underbody and slipping the rear. A lot to unpack right there. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment. If you're a subscriber of ours, feel free to reach out, or just a customer of any sort, reach out in our Discord, email, chat, etc. We're here to answer because this is a lot of info and it seems like second nature to me, but I might be just verbal diarrhea-ing over here and you might be thinking, oh my God, what is this guy saying? It's also pretty late at night, so I might be slightly delirious, so apologies for that. But anyway, so shallow entry into turn 1, slow lift into a quick lift, and then it's very quickly back in the throttle, okay? And it's almost like a spring, like it's out and then it's back in. Just really brief moment of full lift, coast, so I can set the car and then get back in it. That initial throttle is about 50%. That quickly rises to like 70-ish, 75. But then you'll see it plateaus there, maybe 80. Now, I could go 100% throttled here and just carry this thing up the track on fresh tires. But again, like I discussed while I was in the run, if I do that, I'm going to destroy the right rear, possibly the right front if I'm cranking wheel. So just plateau that throttle at a point that you feel comfortable with, whether it's 75, 80, whatever. And that's also making decent enough lap time early in the run so you're not completely hemorrhaging track position. More than likely, as I had said, there are going to be people that are on different agendas and are going to drive to the front like their ass is on fire, and then they're going to fall right back. And when they're driving like their ass is on fire, they're going to pass you and there's nothing you can do about it. Nobody's going to have the perfect car where they can drive like that the whole run and not have some sort of consequences. Like you're going to be penalized at some point. If a setup is better than another, maybe the penalty comes earlier or later in the run, but either way, there's going to be a penalty. And if the thing goes a full fuel run, those people that did not save are going to be in trouble later. And more than likely, the people who did save over the course of the run, they will net out in a better position, a better track position because their overall run time is better, even though they started slower. Put that all together. Hopefully it makes sense. So again, a way to save the right rear is to plateau that throttle slightly below the limit of the grip and keep it there until you get well toward the end of the corner. Right here, we're probably at the 3/4 mark before I'm getting to full throttle. And that's several hundred feet later than I probably could have been full throttle. So that's 1 and 2. That's a deep dive into 1 and 2. And again, you'll notice I'm very low. I'm hugging the white line. I'm trying not to track out too quickly because as I go over these seams and the right rear catches, it might upset it. Kind of similar to Kansas, coming off the bottom, not tracking out too aggressively. But as you get deeper into the run and you have less grip to lean on, you're going to have to track out more because the car is just going to want to go there. You don't have enough to hold you down, and that's okay. So that's a deep dive into 1 and 2. We'll go over the different lines in a bit. Really, none of them worked, but I'll just show you what didn't work, and that should be pretty much it for 1 and 2. Okay. So off the corner right here, out to the wall nice and easily. And now pay close attention to the lift and notice how much different it is than 1 and 2 into 3 and 4. Slow for like the first 20%, so like 100 to 80 is pretty slow, and then 80 to 0, bang, off the throttle. And then even later in the run, that little 20% slow moment at the top of the pedal, you're not going to have that because you're not going to have the front grip to be able to have that slow release later in the run. Like you're going to have to dump that throttle to get the front to cut off the wall and point it to the white line. If you try to have a slow lift into 3 later in the run, you're never going to get to the bottom because you're just going to chatter the front tires all the way through the entry of the corner. So as soon as you turn off the wall, if you do not fully lift quickly, you're just going to push up the track, and then you're probably going to snap loose and exit because you've got too much wheel in it. A lot of people struggle with tight entry, long run in 3, and then loose off, and that all starts with what happens way back here. And that's why I always say, and for anybody who's watched my videos for a while will know this, the most important part of the corner is the entry, because if you screw up the entry, the rest of the corner is screwed. You might be able to make some corrections and make some gains back on it, and maybe salvage the corner, but overall it's not going to be as good as it could have been in any way if you do not get into the corner as you should. You can screw up the center a little bit and come back from it with less of a penalty. You can screw up the exit a little bit, and as long as you correct that quickly, not too much of a penalty. But if you don't enter correctly and you continue to do that and you compound that throughout a run, bad. Especially at Vegas, especially into turn 3. So quick lift at the bottom of the pedal and then right back on it. And then very similar to 1 and 2, okay, right on the bottom. The plateau is probably a little bit more than 1 and 2 just because I'm not going through bumps, so I don't have that underbody getting affected and upset. So I can plateau at like 85% and then eventually go to 100% right before this apron white line cuts into pit road. As we go throughout the run, obviously all this stuff is going to move back a little bit as you lose grip, right? That lift is going to be quicker. The on throttle point is going to be farther around the corner. The plateau is going to be a little bit less, and that wide open commitment moment is going to be, again, farther around the corner because you don't have the tire to lean on, okay? So that's all to be expected. So when you watch these videos, you make sure that you don't just watch this part where I'm breaking down mainly the hot lap. Make sure you're sort of skimming around, which is why we have the sections. Make sure you're skimming around and saying, okay, how did the lift change from lap 1 to 20? Where's the on throttle point? And try to get an idea. For those of you that are subscribed and have the Garage 61 data at your fingertips, this video is a good supplement to being able to overlay the data on top of yours, so my data on top of yours, to see how my inputs evolve over the run. Gives you a benchmark for how yours should evolve over the run. If you're just watching these videos and you're not subscribed or a customer of ours and don't have the data, you don't have that at your disposal, unfortunately. But again, that makes these videos that much more important. Make sure that you're thorough and watch them through and don't just skim, right? If you really want to learn, you got to watch a lot of it. Okay, so that's pretty much the execution on a hot lap or like a regular lap at Vegas. Now let's look at a couple different lines, which most of which are going to be bad. This is a 3094, so this is probably when I almost crash. And again, my aim here was to put the left sides just below this first seam and wrap it and manage the rear with the throttle. But as you can see here, it's bumpy, and then it catches, and now I'm on the right rear. And I don't know if this shows in the video, but you can see that I am leaving a tire mark here, which might have been there before. But the point is, we are laying down rubber off of 2 regardless. It's just how much load we have off of 2. So if I'm slipping the tire this much, I'm out of control. You can see I can't put gas in it. We don't have the side force to yaw these cars out like this anymore. So this is bad. So that might not be an available line in the races. Maybe it will be once the track changes and the weather's a little bit different and you've got traffic around you and things, but I didn't like that. I think a lot of people are going to be vying for the bottom, which means that if everybody's on the bottom, you're going to have to get clean air somewhere, and then you might have to try here. You might have to try to go up the track, but this middle and the top, which I'm not even going to bother really showing because there was absolutely nothing good happening up there, just too bumpy. Now, on the flip side, 3 and 4 up top, super good. So you'll see here, I'm not trying to be Dale Jr. in his prime or the Kyle Larson of today and pack air against the wall and be an inch off of it. We don't need to do that here. So don't, because if you do that, you leave yourself zero margin for error. What you can do is you can enter about a quarter to 3/8 of a car width off the wall with full lift, and then drive it back up toward the wall in the center and then cut it down on exit. It's almost like a diamond. You enter a bit off the wall, you get up to your highest point in the center, and then you drive back down the track on exit. Because this exit here narrows up very quickly, that changed a lot when they continued the safer barrier onto the front stretch. So you've got to give yourself a little bit of an angle off the corner, or else you're going to run out of room and smack the fence. And like I showed in the video there, I do think that top is really good. I think it will be quicker long run at times. I think if too many, look out. I think if too many people, that could have been worse. I think if too many people start to run the top, it'll get rubbered in and it'll get slick and it won't be as good. So you're just going to have to move around. Dynamic track is definitely a thing now. So just make sure you're searching and moving around. Okay, before I attempt to break anything else in this room, let's go to the pit in, pit out and wrap this thing up because we're at 32 minutes and I think I've probably lost most of you by now. But if you're still here, kudos to you. You're a serious sim racer and we like that. All right, so let's go to the pit in here. So see, I brake a little bit on entry, which is unique to this. Drive it around the corner and then start braking pretty much at the halfway point of the turn. Are there any markers on the wall? Not really. Nothing you can see in the car. You want to brake before the ZMAX logos, so maybe use that. And then just big brakes, driving up the track and then back down. You don't have to use this line as like a hard and fast, okay, I got to get to the left of that. You can go over that and not get a penalty. Just make sure that you're at pit road speed by the commitment line there, 50 miles an hour. Exiting pit road, your second gear right here, short shift to third, a lot of wheel spin, third. And then you're not going to get too close to the track because you don't want to get that right rear hung up on the transition. You're going to stay right between these two seams right here. Hustle that thing off the pit road and merge off too. So overall, I think that covers Vegas. And we've done many, many track guides here now. And I think a lot of you have probably seen them. And most of this should sound similar. I would say the big takeaways should be as follow. Big time tire wear, so make sure you manage the front end of the run. You have no side force anymore, so make sure you don't slip the right rear because that will worsen your tire wear and make you really bad later. Pit road entry is tricky, so be careful for that, as are the bumps in 1 and 2, very line sensitive, so try to keep it to the bottom as much as possible down there. In 3 and 4, you've got more maneuverability because you don't have as many bumps, so definitely play around with that as your races go. But otherwise, that should cover it. Thank you everybody so much for watching our Team Conti Sim Performance track guides. We greatly appreciate your support and encourage you to like these videos and subscribe so we can continue to invest in putting out content like this and continuing to elevate our content game moving forward and into 2026. So thank you so much again. Have a great week at Vegas, and we will see you next time.